All right, so all about addiction. As I mentioned in the description, this is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. And I'm so honored to be here with you to share this today. So, what is addiction? And that's one thing we'll talk about. And we'll also talk about how our thoughts play a huge role in addiction. And then I'll give you the ABCs of recovery for those of you who are uh, stepping into sobriety or actually already in sobriety and looking to take it to the next level. Okay. And there will also be an invitation for you to take another step. So, all right, so let's start about talking about addiction, all about addiction. Addiction is compulsive dependence on a substance or a behavior, plus the inability to control or moderate its occurrence. Okay, it's yeah, you can't control it. That's addiction, and that's what frustrates so many people is they think they should be able to control it, but that's the nature of addiction. So that's where the negative thinking comes in and the self judgment comes in and the shame because we've been conditioned to believe that uh, you should just be able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Do it yourself in the West. That's very much the Western ideology that we've all been conditioned into. Okay. Well, you got to let that go. If you want to recover from addiction, you have to be willing to let that go. Okay, so um, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about what addiction is. You know, there's if you're an addict or if you know an addict, I mean, you know what it is. Like you're aware of the problem. The problem is that you are unable to control your use of a substance or a particular behavior. Okay. And what is really helpful to realize is that all behavior has a purpose. Okay. All behavior has a purpose. Now, I don't feel like anybody sets out to be an addict. It's something that just happens over time. And all that, all that we're doing when we're trying to avoid pain or feel more pleasure. Okay, so we have this pendulum swing in life of avoiding pain, feeling pleasure, moving away from pain, moving towards pleasure. And eventually that takes us, it can, not always, but eventually that takes us way out of balance. Okay, so when you're in recovery and you're getting back to balance, you're doing things that help you return to homeostasis or balance in all your systems. Because addiction may start with in the physical, it may start with mental, emotional, or energetic, like you're using something for energy or to calm energy, or it can be even be spiritual. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So it can have be filling different needs or have a specific root that causes it. But then what happens is it affects all the other layers and levels of your being. Okay, so it starts with one particular reason, something you're either avoiding or you're attaching to. So attachment or aversion, pain, pleasure. But then what happens is you know it has a huge ripple effect, right? So you start for one thing to solve one issue or to soothe one issue or whatever, and then it ripples out into other. So when you're in recovery, you need a multifaceted approach to heal and whole and integrate and rebalance. Okay? So let's go into the, and the other thing I want to say is, so I said that all behavior has a purpose. And all behavioral change, when we're making behavioral changes, are rooted, they start at the conscious level, but to really integrate the behavior, it's got to get into the unconscious. So there's specific things that you can do to root the behavioral change into the unconscious mind, because 95% of our mind is, and our experience is rooted in the unconscious. So I'll just give you a quick example. For anyone who's learned how to drive a car, when you're first learning how to drive a car, you have to consciously think about everything that you're doing. You're moving these different body parts, to operate the car, especially if you learn to drive a stick shift car with the clutch and the gas and the stick shift and everything. Okay. So you're consciously learning, and then eventually you don't have to think about it. It's grounded into your unconscious mind, and your body knows the motions to do, and you can do it without having to even think about it. Okay. So all behavior has a purpose, and all behavior change, to really ground it and root it in your being, has got to get into the unconscious. Okay. So let's talk about the ABCs of recovery. It's actually A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay. And I'm going to start at F. We're going to start at the bottom and work our way up the alphabet. So F stands for food mood. Okay. There's a food mood connection. So when you're in recovery, when you're healing an addiction, it is super important to nourish yourself with healthy, nutritional foods. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. We all know like what's junk and what's good for us. We all know. So what really helped me in my recovery was superfoods, actually. And I'll put a link in the comments after this, but along with the $50 gift card of the specific superfoods that helped me establish a good baseline, because there is a connection between food and mood. Okay. Okay, so E, that's F, food mood connection. E stands for environment. Let's say that you have a sugar addiction, which I've had in the past, and I still have to watch, right? Because sugar is the most addictive substance known to mankind, known to humans. The most addictive. They've taken, rodents, and they've put them in a container with, I think it was heroin, or it was cocaine, morphine, and Oreo cookies. What did they go for? They went for the Oreos. And they not only went for the Oreos, but they would actually remove the chocolate part and go to the white stuff in the middle. Okay, so sugar is the most addictive substance known. So environment, if your intention is to heal your sugar addiction, get off sugar, is it going to be helpful if you open your pantry and there's a bunch of sugary foods in there? No. That's not going to be helpful. That's going to make it harder. So set up your environment to where it's going to support your recovery. If you are smoking a bunch of weed and you live with a bunch of potheads, is it going to be easy to quit? No, it's going to be hard. So move, or get everybody else to, do it with you, whatever. Change your environment. D stands for dopamine. When you have been in the full throes of addiction, your dopamine gets out of whack, or rather, you're being rewarded. The dopamine is related to the reward, getting the reward, you get a hit of dopamine. So when when you get your substance or you take the pills or you eat the sugar, you get a burst of dopamine. So it's being artificially created, or it's kind of hijacked by your behavior, right? And so you have to recognize that you're going to need to elevate dopamine by novel activity, but it can be hard to do because dopamine also relates to, so that means doing new things, trying new things. But that can be hard to do because dopamine also relates to motivation. Okay. Um, so dopamine, as well as your other spectrum of amino acids, neurotransmitters rather, which are built from amino acids, those are out of balance. Did you know that 90% of people who are healing an addiction end up relapsing? Only 10% are successful. However, that statistic can be flipped. The 90-10 can be flipped by, and that's with, like in a center, in a sobriety center, you've got counseling, you've got good food, this and that. The way they flipped it, the way Julia Ross flipped it in her clinic in California, is they introduced amino acid therapy. And I'll put a link to that book I just held up in the comments. So it's The Mood Cure by Julia Ross. And you can click on that link and get it on Amazon. You can also just go to her website, I think it's juliaross.com, or just Google it. And what I love about this book is it helps you figure out, and the quiz online that you can do on our website is it helps you figure out what neurotransmitters are out of balance for you. And you can also get blood tests and things like that. But a quick first check is to do this quiz. And what they found out is, with addiction, is not only is the dopamine out of whack, the neurotransmitter, but some other things, serotonin, just all kinds of other things are out of whack. So if you're just trying to will your way through it, we're talking about like a chemical chain reaction. Okay, so like any of you have taken chemistry, it's like you add one thing to another, or you remove thing and add oxygen. It's a chemical reaction, and that's occurring in your body. Okay, so it requires that you rebalance that. I'm just looking to see here. The other thing is that's important to realize with dopamine and the other neurotransmitters is that a lot of times, like, I don't know what percentage, but a high percentage of those are related to our gut health. And with certain addictions, the gut health is really taken out of whack. Sugar, alcohol, even with weed, it can be taken out of whack, but certainly other things as well. So because the gut and the brain are intimately connected, and if your gut is out of whack, a lot of times with sugar addiction, you'll have candida overgrowth. Same thing with alcohol. You can have candida overgrowth. And that's why, like, a lot of people, when they stop drinking, they start eating a lot of sugar. It's because it's feeding the candida still. So resetting your gut health, in addition to that amino acid therapy, can really help rebalance your whole system so that you're not being driven by this insatiable craving. That's really just a chemical chain reaction within you that's driving it. So just be aware of that. So that brings us to C, which there's two things for C. One is compassion. So have compassion for yourself. Recognize that You know, your systems have gotten out of whack, and that's why you can't will your way through it. Okay, sometimes it's just like biochemistry happening. So have some compassion for yourself, and actively work with connection, with connecting to yourself. So those mind body practices, spiritual practices, you've got to connect to what's going on inside of you, because it's the only way out is in. The only way out is in. So a lot of times with addiction, we're running away from something that's going on inside, and that can be an unhealed trauma. It can be a limiting belief. It can be all kinds of things, really. But a big one for me was a spiritual disconnect. Okay, so relooming the parts and pieces of yourself back together by doing some mind body practices. Because here's the thing, and this would be a good one to write down if you're taking notes, is the mind does not live in the body lives in the mind. The body lives in the mind. Okay, and if we're unable to connect to that mind, that greater part of ourselves, and connect to our relationship to our higher selves, then if we're not in that connection, then there's going to be discord or disharmony. Okay, something's going to be off. So spiritual practice, mind body practice, I love yoga, meditation, and then also really awakening your purpose and creating more meaning in your life through that. B stands for behavior. So when we're integrating a new behavior, we have to recognize, the example I gave earlier was when you're learning to drive a car, at first you have to think about it, and it's clunky. Okay, so when you're learning a new behavior, it takes practice, and you have to think about it, and it's not easy. It can be difficult. But if the more you do it, the more you practice, the easier it gets to integrate it into your being. Okay, so B also stands for beingness, your ability to be with yourself and your ability to be aware of thoughts that are self harming, negative self talk, self doubt. Okay, so a lot of us have this programming going on underneath the surface in the unconscious mind, things that we didn't even choose ourselves, that were just conditioned into us, okay, by society, friends, family, media, government, preachers, teachers, etc., or trauma sometimes. Okay, so a lot of us have these programs that are running under the surface that are then affecting everything else. So being aware and being able to catch that thought and ask, is that really true? Okay, and there's specific processes that we can do that I specialize in, that I do with my clients, to where we can rewrite that programming. So once you catch that thought where you're like, wow, here I am thinking I'm not good enough again, or I'm not worthy, or whatever it is. So once you catch that thought, then we have something, we've got a hold of the weed, right? And then we can go into the unconscious mind, and we can pull that weed up by the root and plant something healthy. So that's some of the specific techniques I do with my clients are removing those limiting beliefs that are creating behaviors on the surface, because all behavior has a purpose. Okay, so if you believe subconsciously, unconsciously, that you're not worthy or you're not good enough, you're going to behave in accordance to that, even though you're trying to will your way out of it through affirmations or specific actions. Okay, so if you can get to the root of it, then you can plant something new. You can plant a new belief. Okay, and finally, A stands for accountability. It's really helpful. I mean, there's probably people out there that could do it by themselves. I know I certainly tried for a while, for a long time, because that was part of my conditioning. It was part of my limiting belief, was that I had to do it all by myself. I had to do it. I had to figure it out. You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You got to just do it. Just do it. Just do the thing. Why can't you just do it? Well, the reason you can't do it is because you can't control the behavior. So you need to have somebody to be accountable to, and there's some different ways you can do that. So accountability first to yourself, like committing to it. You're deciding, you've made a decision, this no longer is functional, this has become dysfunctional, and there's all these other ripple effects, adverse effects it's creating in my life, and I'm done. Okay, so you decide, so you're accountable to yourself. But then if you don't tell anybody else what your intention is, what your new MO is, then your new method of operation is, then it can be easy to fall back into the old pattern. Okay, so you need accountability. You need someone to be accountable to. So you can hire a coach, you can work with someone like me, and I'll put a link in the chat for you to have a free discovery call with me, and we can explore that further. You can make Ulysses contracts with friends and family, or people that you do the behavior with or get your substance from. You let them know. And Ulysses contract goes, what is it? Homer and the Odyssey. So Ulysses was wanted to hear the song of the sirens as the ship went by, but he didn't want to go to the island and pursue the temptation. He wanted to hear the song, but not follow that thread and pursue his temptation of the sirens on the island. So he had his crew tie him to the mast, and he had them put wax in their ears so they wouldn't hear the song of the siren, and they could steer the ship by the island, and he could hear the song without going over the island. So you need to make Ulysses contracts with people that you do the behavior with, people that you get your substance from, yada yada yada, and with yourself. So have an accountability system, that's your support system, in place. Let go of the idea that you need to do it all yourself, or that and there's also ways to heal the shame, because there's a lot of shame with addiction, right? Because again, that goes back to that myth that we should be able to do it ourselves. So just stop shooting on yourself, like my yoga teacher says. Stop shooting on yourself and reach out. Get some help, get some support, find somebody that can help keep you accountable. So let me go through those again real quick. So we have the A, B, C, D, E, F of recovery. Accountability is A, so be accountable to yourself and get an accountability system set in place, whether that's with a coach like me or someone like me, or with Ulysses contracts with other people. B is for behavior and beliefs. Okay, so changing the behavior, again, recognizing that behavioral change, the behavior has a purpose and is being maintained by some sort of belief, and a lot of those beliefs might be in your unconscious. So just recognizing that and being aware, your beingness. C stands for compassion. Have self-compassion as you're going through this process. And connection, connecting to yourself on all levels and connecting to your spiritual power and your spiritual practice, as well as your purpose. D stands for dopamine and other neurotransmitters, which can be rebalanced through nutrition, but also amino acid therapy. And I put a link in the chat for you to look at, and also find Julia Ross's website so that you can take that mood cure quiz to see what sort of neurotransmitters or what amino acids might be helpful for you to balance out cravings and triggers. And then E is environment. So set up your environment for success. If you're going to quit sugar, clean out your pantry, make it easy on yourself. I guess E could also stand for easy, right? And then F is the food mood relationship. So support your recovery by taking in good nutritional foods. And as I mentioned, I'll put a gift card in the chat, or rather in the comments, where and a specific link to the superfoods pack that is really helpful in recovery. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and so we can talk all about addiction. And please, please reach out to me if, again, I'll put this in the chat or the comments. I'm so used to being on Zoom, I call it the chat. A link for you to have a free discovery session with me if you're either struggling with an addiction or you're in recovery and you're still like not feeling really solid or centered. I have been there. I have relapsed so many times. I don't even have enough fingers to count. So I've been there, done that. I know the road. I've got some maps. I've got some tools and some tricks and tips to make it fun along the way, and a lot easier on you. So you don't have to go it alone. Okay, it's not necessary. Let's dispel that myth and let's help you feel better and enliven and thrive. All right, namaste, y'all. Thanks for being here, and I will see you next week.